There are some things that never stop following you. Man, that is a chilling thought, isn't it? The idea that a single mistake, a fleeting moment of disrespect, or even just a desperate choice could allegedly attach something dark to you for the absolute rest of your life.
Welcome to today's Explainer. Today, we're opening up a series of deeply unsettling real-life case files. We're looking at first-hand accounts from people who claim to have crossed the boundary into the occult. Now, to be clear, we are impartially analyzing these claims of dark energies, curses, and the devastating consequences of interfering with the unknown. We're not here to take sides or endorse these viewpoints. We're just here to break down the fascinating and honestly terrifying structures of these accounts.
All right, let's get into case one, the cursed Hamirpur wedding.
Okay, so picture this. Our first case takes us up to the mountains of Hamirpur, Himachal Pradesh. We've got a team of exhausted wedding photographers driving through the night. At 1:30 a.m., they pull over on this pitch-black mountain road to drink some beer and take a break. But this is exactly where the tragedy starts. At 2 a.m., a photographer named Vikas smashes his empty bottle on what he assumes is just a patch of dirt, and then he urinates right there. Well, what he didn't know, according to local mystics who reviewed this later, was that he was standing on the unmarked grave of an accident victim. Out in the mountains, restless spirits from tragic accidents are often buried with these small, subtle shrines. He had just severely disrespected one.
So, the team finally arrives at their eerie, aging government hotel. And, fun fact, this is actually the exact same location where a really famous horror movie was filmed. They're exhausted, they crash. But at 3:30 a.m., the host wakes up to a sound that literally makes his blood run cold. It's the distinct sound of running water echoing out of the bathroom. He nudges his colleague, because, who could possibly be taking a shower at 3:30 in the morning in the freezing cold? Well, they push the bathroom door open and they find Vikas. He had meticulously laid a towel down inside the shower area and he was fast asleep, directly underneath the running tap. Freezing mountain water is just pouring over him and he is completely oblivious. When they finally manage to wake him up 10 minutes later, he has absolutely no memory of getting in there. And it gets worse. The very next night, right in the middle of the wedding, he vanished again, only to be found sound asleep outdoors on a bridge, entirely unaware of how he got there. Now, this brilliantly illustrates the long-term impact of this encounter. Before this trip, Vikas was just a normal, fully employed photographer. But after returning to Delhi, his life spiraled into an absolute nightmare. He'd go to sleep safely in his bed, only to wake up lying out in an open parking lot because an unseen force had dragged him there in his sleep. He even started getting randomly attacked on the street by complete strangers wielding hockey sticks for literally no reason. According to the mystics they consulted, that vengeful entity from the mountain grave is now completely attached to him, constantly controlling and ruining his finances, his relationships, and his sanity.
Moving right along to case two, the haunted podcast studio.
So what happens when you intentionally invite practitioners into your own workspace? Well, you get a wild variety of terrifying manifestations. In this case, a host invited a tantric into his studio for an interview. During the session, the tantric actually insisted on drinking alcohol out of a coffee cup while discussing dark rituals. And almost immediately after he left, absolute chaos erupted. The host reported being physically thrown from his bed 8 to 10 times a night. Back in the studio, their expensive autofocus cameras would just inexplicably blur out. Crucial recorded audio files were automatically deleting themselves from memory cards. And maybe most damaging of all for a business owner, their wedding photography inquiries dropped to absolute zero overnight. But the climax of the studio haunting is truly bizarre. An angelic healer came by as a guest. When she called the cab to leave, she and her team watched in pure horror as the cab pulled up with an invisible passenger. 3 separate people witnessed a phantom old man walk straight out of the studio and occupy the front seat of that cab. Now, the driver couldn't actually see the man, but he could definitely feel the terrifying energies sitting next to him. In fact, just a few kilometers down the road near Badapur, the driver was so overcome with dread that he abandoned his own car on the side of the highway and just fled on foot.
Eventually, the host brought in a trusted energy worker to cleanse the space. The moment she entered, the healer ordered the host to sit on the floor and asked for 2 cigarettes. Then, in this shocking display, she lit both cigarettes, and I'm not kidding, inhaled them entirely in one single massive breath, something that is physically impossible for a normal person to do. She blew the smoke right over the host to break the attachment, looked at him, and delivered this chilling final warning. "Vacate this studio. It will only ruin you." And he listened. He moved out immediately.
Next up, Case 3, the Pune Vashikoran tragedy. Let's see how this builds from accidental disrespect to intentional, desperate malice. We're talking about Vashikaran, which is a form of occult mind control. A woman named Priya developed this intense, all-consuming obsession with a married coworker. And when he rejected her to try and save his marriage, she just snapped. She went on the internet, found a dark practitioner, and paid him 4 lakh rupees, which is a massive amount of money, to perform a ritual meant to control the man's mind. And she was warned right up front that she had to follow every single instruction perfectly, no matter how extreme it got. Things escalated fast. The peak of this was when the tantric demanded, "Give me 2 drops of your blood." By adding her own blood to the ritual, they allegedly unleashed a dark entity to torment this man. And the terrifying part? The accounts say it worked in the most twisted way possible. The man began violently hallucinating, getting to the point where he'd wake up in the middle of the night and start calling his own wife by Priya's name. But as these accounts constantly remind us, dark magic always exacts a price. The man's wife quickly realized what was going on and hired her own mystic to reverse the curse. When that dark energy violently rebounded back to Priya, the results were just catastrophic. The targeted man simply couldn't handle the spiritual torment and tragically took his own life. But the dark mimic entity, it became permanently stuck to Priya. Today, the report says she has entirely lost her mind. She actually refuses to believe the man is dead because she claims she still sees him sleeping right beside her every single night. And finally, Case 4, the Varanasi lore, Shav Sadhana. For our final case file today, we are looking at the absolute extreme edge of the occult, focusing on the ancient city of Varanasi and the grim lore of Shav Sadhana, or the corpse rituals. Now, Shav Sadhana isn't something performed on just anyone. According to local lore down at the Harishchandra Ghat, Aghori practitioners seek out half-burnt corpses secretly pulled from funeral pyres. But it has to be a very specific body, one whose astrological alignments at the exact time of death perfectly match the ritual's strict needs. The practitioner literally sits directly on the corpse to meditate. The goal? To conquer the ultimate fear of death and summon powerful deities. But it involves immense, almost unthinkable danger. You are supposedly completely surrounded by dark, parasitic energies actively trying to break your focus. There's this famous piece of local lore where one Aghori supposedly found the absolute perfect corpse, but a clairvoyant Brahmin warned him not to steal it. Well, the Aghori ignored the warning, basically saying his years of intense preparation made him ready for anything. He initiates the ritual, but the very next morning, he was found dead. The accounts claim his head had literally exploded and the corpse beneath him had been reduced to pure ash. The story goes that he actually successfully summoned the terrifying energy of the goddess Kali, but his mortal body simply could not withstand that sheer, overwhelming power. Which brings us to our conclusion. Guard your aura.
So what does this all mean for us? Across all these incredibly diverse source accounts, one very consistent theme emerges. Interfering with unknown energies, whether you're foolishly smashing a bottle on a dark road, casually inviting practitioners into your workspace, or intentionally buying dark magic out of obsession, carries alleged lifelong, devastating consequences. It really forces us to ask a rather unsettling question as we wrap up today. If these invisible structures and unknown energies truly do surround us in our day-to-day lives, are you inadvertently inviting them in? Think about the boundaries you might be pushing and the spaces you inhabit. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Until next time, stay curious and maybe guard your aura just a little bit closer.